Alright, today guys, we got the squad in here at my shop, and we're going to do 2 wheel bearings in the front. We're going to show you how that's done. First you got to start with obviously pulling the wheel off. We did that because we didn't want to waste time. If you can't take off 4 lug nuts, please don't continue on this project. The next thing that we did was we pulled this cotter pin out of here. I don't know where Mike put it, but just throw it aside. You could probably reuse it. If not, get some new wire or a new one. They're probably a couple cents. So now we're gonna flash over and show you guys the next step.
What's up, guys? We're getting ready to pull the wheel bearing assembly, the hub assembly off. To do this, you need a 13 millimeter deep, 27 millimeter shallow. We're gonna pull the caliper off and then pull the wheel hub off. So let's get to it. Just 2 bolts right here hold the caliper on. Ratchet. Boom. 2 bolts. She's out of our way. Just tuck it off to the side here. Alright, next step, we're going to pull off the axle nut that holds the hub into place. Before you break the caliper loose, go ahead and break this bolt loose so you're not fighting the hub spinning on the axle shaft. Castle nut off. Whole hub assembly pulls right off. Mindful of the O-ring right here. Try not to damage it. If it's damaged, go ahead and replace it. Alright, for this next step, we just moved our hub assembly to our bench vise. Put a piece of wood underneath so it can't fall down any. We got our trusty snap-on hand impact for these Torx bits. They are T40, so you're going to need that. We use an hand impact driver to help crack these loose so we don't worry about stripping out the Torx heads for when we reinstall them at the end of the video. So just going to crack these loose. Alright, now we cracked one loose before we started, so we're just going to grab our ratchet and just run these bolts out. As you can see, these bolts did have Loctite on them. We will re-Loctite when we reinstall the rotor. And if you're ever questioning your rotor thickness, Can-Am put a helpful thickness guide right here on the back side. So if you're ever wondering how they're getting too thin, pull out your dial caliper, mic them, you'll know if you're good to go or not. So she's off. We're going to start on the next step. Alright, next step, we got to remove the oil seals on both sides. We're just going to videotape one. It's pretty self-explanatory. Take your screwdriver, flathead, stick it right down under here. This is your oil seal. Just give her a little twist up. She pops right out. Now, when we took our wheel off, the seal was kind of bad. So the outer part of the seal with the retaining spring already broke off. So they're junk. Our new kit has 2 new ones, one for either side. So come right back and press the bearings out. So next we're going to take these wheel bearings out of the hub. We thought it was going to be a lot harder. Apparently they're not as tight as we thought they were. They just push right out. We just use an extension to get into there. That's one. This is your spacer for between the bearings. And then, look at that. We got to press one of them out. So we'll show you how that works. Over here to our handy press. Oh, this is our wonderful sounding.
That's horrible.
Yeah, she's shot. So this is our press. It's homemade. She works. I just grabbed a piece of steel I had machined to do another tool. Fits right down in there. Slide her under your press. Just put some tension on her. You don't want to go too much. You don't want to bust your hub. It's only light steel. There she goes.
Oh boy.
She's out. We're going to take some memory cloth, clean up the space for the bearing, and we'll see you in a few minutes. So we just had to hit the inner part with a little purple powder actually. Just some little elbow grease. Clean the pocket for the bearing up a little bit. We are going to hit it with some emery cloth just to make sure it's nice and shiny so we don't have to worry about the bearing not fitting. We just have some 320 grit emery cloth. It's just sandpaper really. We do have some more aggressive stuff, but we recommend not going too heavy so you don't score the metal. So we're local to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're about an hour outside. There's a cool company located about 15 minutes from us called All Balls Racing. Check them out. Check out their website. They got all kinds of parts. We drove down there today, picked up 2 bearing kits, one for each side. Comes with 2 new oil seals, 2 new bearings, and some cool stickers. Pretty reasonably priced. I think it was 20 bucks per side. I mean, you can't beat the customer service, so definitely check them out. Plus, they're really, really good bearings. So, cleaned up the hub. You can see this is the clean side, nice shiny metal, and this is our non-clean side we have to tackle yet. Rusty, gritty, nasty looking. So we got our bearing kit unpacked, getting ready to put the first bearing in. This is just a little, this is what your bearing should sound like. Quiet, it should roll smooth. Nice sealed bearing, requires 0 maintenance, can't grease them, nothing like that. So we just set it in the pocket for your bearing. I like to use a socket to tap it in lightly. Do not use the wrong size socket, so then you can see you'll be hitting on the bearing part of the bearing. You want to use a larger socket to tap on the outer race. So use dead blow. Make sure she goes in straight. Just about there. Nice. She's in there, ready to go. So we got the front bearing in, we're getting ready to do the back side. Don't forget your spacer that goes in between the two bearings so it distributes the load across the inner races. Without that, you're going to blow out your bearings. So you don't really have to center it. It kind of floats in the middle. When you put it on the axle stud, the hub stud, it will center itself. It's not that tight of a fit. So we're going to put our second side in. Grab our socket and our hammer. So she's all the way seated. Obviously, you can do all this with your press. We want to show a couple different ways on how to do it to give some people that don't have a press a better idea on how they can tackle this. So next, we're going to flip it over, put our seals on it, and then put the brake rotor back on. So next is your oil ring. These are pretty self-explanatory. I would not recommend using a sledgehammer to tap these in. I like to use a dead blow or a rubber mallet so you don't damage the actual metal. They just oops. You can see it's nice and seated along the ring, and just got to flip it over and do the other side. All right, we're getting ready to put the brake rotor on. We want to go over some fluids and some products that you may want to buy before you start this product. We have crude oil. You can use PB Blaster, any type of rust breaker. Sometimes, your quads sit outside, you ride through some crap. They're hard to take out. If you notice that your bolts are looking a little rusty before you start this project, spray it down with some crude oil or PB Blaster overnight. Let it sit, and it should make the project easier. We're going to use Loctite next to put the rotor back on to make sure the screws don't back out. Do not use Never Seize where you need Loctite and vice versa. Only use Loctite on these bolts. They should stay in there. You don't want to have to take it back apart because your rotor fell off. So it doesn't matter what order it sits, as long as you have the measurement towards you. It's all that matters, because it's countersunk that side, flat on that side. It's kind of hard to put on the wrong direction. So we're going to get our Loctite. We're just using blue. You can get red. It's higher strength. We don't recommend using that because you're probably going to have to take this back apart at some point. So back in. This is the correct amount. Just a little dab, nothing too much. One of these bottles lasts forever. I'm not going through that much fluid. Now you just want to be careful with torques. If you put too much loading on the bit, you can twist it, break it, it would suck in the middle of your project. So they're nice and tight. She's back on there. We're ready to reinstall on the quad. So when removing the hubs, and you have to squeeze the brake sometimes to take your nut off, the brakes will actually squeeze shut. So a little tip that we have, we use it on cars, bikes, quads. Just take a C-clamp, clamp it between the backside of the pad. You can go off the head of the bolt. You're not applying that much pressure. Just going to turn it in, and you can see we've now gained space. Take the C-clamp off. And now we have space, so we can put the rotor back in. So, just going to take your hub assembly, slide it on. Remember to inspect your O-ring, make sure it's not damaged from pulling it. We're going to put our hub assembly. Sometimes I stick my finger in to help guide that centerpiece on. You can see back in place. Hub assembly is now quiet. We didn't take a video of the before, but it was extremely noisy and there was lots of up and down slop. You can see here, applying force, there is no slop to the hub at all. When you put it back together, don't forget this washer goes against. You can only put it on one direction. Has a piece that fits right against your seal. Put that on and apply some Never Seas lightly. This stuff goes a long way. Don't get it on your hands. It'll end up on your face, on your clothes. It goes everywhere. So just a little dab on the threads, just like that. Now when we thread the nut on, it'll spread itself through the threads the whole way. Take our socket, and tighten it down. Alright, we got her a little snug. Now we're going to take our brake caliper, reinstall. Recommend doing the same thing to your brake caliper. Just a very light dab. Never Seas, not a whole lot. Just so these bolts do not lock in. You're able to remove them down the road. Now while you have everything apart, I would recommend bleeding your brakes just to make sure everything is kosher before you put it all back together. Just easy maintenance stuff to do while you have your tools out and your wheels and your quad is apart. You can do this by yourself or you can have a friend help you. Now, this is a castle nut. So you're going to want to turn it tight until one of the spires of the castle lines up with the hole in the stud. You want to be careful when you're doing this and just go a little bit at a time so you can get it lined up, because loosening and tightening and going back and forth can be a real pain in the neck. So a tiny bit more and we're good. Perfect. So we decided to reuse a new cotter pin. We got this set at Harbor Freight. It's like $5. These are larger cotter pins. They have a set that is smaller ones that'll do like your ball joints and stuff like that. It's $5. It's handy to have. It's a nice tool to have in the garage. So we're just going to put our cotter pin back in. These are extremely long, but we just fold them around. It will not cause a single problem. Our cotter pin's on. Everything's snug. We're ready to put the wheel back on. Alright, we're going to take her out for a test ride, see how she runs. Before she pulled real bad to the right. Hopefully it's alleviated. It was sketchy trying to rip it down the street with a bad wheel bearing. It pulled real hard. So see how she runs. Rides a lot better. tough get called. Woo! Alright. Next video we should be working on that sexy little RM over there. So check back on the channel often. Hopefully we'll post some more videos here shortly.